Serious? Who amongst your high school graduating class had the most tragic adult life? Girl I had a huge crush on in 11th grade. Got pregnant at 17. Missed graduation. Baby dies the day after they bring it home from the hospital. Her boyfriend dies in an alcohol-related car accident a week later. She kills herself the next day. Frick, that went dark real quick. I am old, so my graduating class will be on average 43 now. There are many deaths, tragic divorces, etc. The following is the most tragic story among my friends. A girl that I was close to from kindergarten through graduation and stayed in touch with afterwards. She married in her 30s and had trouble conceiving children. She spent 8 years and thousands of dollars in order to get pregnant. She was told it wasn't going to happen. 1 week after the doctor confirmed her only pregnancy in all that time, she was diagnosed with an aggressive brain tumor. She died 3 weeks after her beautiful son was born. In a way, it's really nice that she got her ultimate wish before her death. The wild child girl that ended up married with 2 beautiful kids and set in life only to be killed in an accident with a street racer at 30. Kid from my school was an amazing musician. He won every possible award for music at the regional state level, then got a full scholarship to a prestigious music school. Freshman year, he died of a brain aneurysm in his sleep. I'm mid-40s and at primary school, ages 4-11, was very friendly with a group of other girls, called D, T, and A. As well as our time together at school, we spent our evenings and weekends together, and I have happy memories of long summer holidays playing at each other's homes. D became very sick age 11 and died of leukemia a year later. T died age 21 in a car crash with her fiance. He was driving them home late one night when he lost control of the car and it left the road. All 4 occupants of the car were killed. A married, and although I haven't seen her in years, I keep up with news of her via my mum. Last summer my mum phoned me in tears to say that A's 12-year-old son had hanged himself in his bedroom after being the victim of bullying at school. My poor, beautiful friends. I feel so sad for the suffering each of them has endured. I occasionally see D's dad and I can't begin to describe the pain in his eyes, knowing that D never got the chance to grow up. Mark, we sat next to each other, not by choice, all the way through our final year of middle school. We did not get along back then. We argued and bickered relentlessly every day, and on a few occasions the fights got physical and ended in detentions. Despite many requests by both of us, our form tutor at the time refused to separate us because he weirdly believed that we were actually more alike than we realized and insisted that one day we'd be friends. Just 2 weeks before the end of the school year, Mark simply didn't show up for class. We later found out that Mark's parents were engaged in a bitter divorce battle and Mark's mom had gotten full custody. The dad reacted by effectively kidnapping Mark and driving 300 miles away to the coast where he could live with his son in hiding. With Mark gone, I thought I'd be happier, but I just wasn't. As much as I hated the prick, a part of me really hoped the cops would find him and bring him back to us. News of Mark finally came on the very last day of the school year, just as we were about to leave for the holidays. I'll never forget it for the rest of my life. On a Sunday morning, Mark had got up before his father and headed to the beach with his dog. He dug a long tunnel deep into the sand dunes and crawled inside. The tunnel caved in and Mark was buried alive. He was so deep inside that he easily may never have been found had it not been for the dog frantically barking whilst trying to dig him out. It took a whole team of firefighters almost 2 hours to retrieve his body. After hearing the news, I went home and sobbed bitterly into my pillow for the person I honestly thought I despised. I like to think that my form tutor was right, and that we would have one day been friends. I feel sad that I'll never know. For my 6th grade beach trip, I dug 2 6-foot deep craters in the sand. Then I connected them with a tunnel. I am so glad the lifeguard spotted us and made us destroy it. My friend finished university, was about to earn his PhD, got out of an abusive relationship, but finally found a nice girl, and then they died together in a car crash. Nothing in this thread really got to me. It all kinda struck as the usual universe has no justice fair, but for some reason, posts like this always get to me. It's so nice they found each other and got to be together, but they still died. Like, that sucks. I don't know. A guy in my high school, nice guy, got killed while trying to break up a fight. Kid had cancer all his young life, was at death's door numerous times, but always rebounded. Had the heart of a lion, never gave up, never surrendered. He was declared cancer-free on his 18th birthday and got hit and killed by a drunk driver after his senior prom. Come the frick on. That makes no sense at all. I know death can be random and senseless, but Jesus Christ, that one is hard to swallow. My lifelong bully, from early childhood till she dropped out of high school, ended up living a very short, tragic life. She made my life a living heck. She would jump me and harass me and terrorize me on a daily basis for years. She died of a gastro bleed in her apartment. She was there, alone, dead, for about 6 weeks. The apartment manager finally broke in and found her and her 3-month-old baby dead on the floor when she wouldn't answer the phone calls about rent being so late. She bled out. She died of internal bleeding. Her baby starved. No one heard smelled anything due to the way the flats were set up. No one came looking for her except her landlord. That's just horrible. And the poor baby that just slowly died with all that suffering. Kid I'd known most of my life found his mom's body after she committed suicide when he was a kid. It obviously messed him up and he wrestled with depression his whole life. But the thing was, he was a great guy and everyone loved him. He was just a mess on the inside. 6 months after graduating from college, he killed himself. Frick, that's terrible. There was a kid in school whose dad said he'd be back in a minute, then hung himself, and she seemed to not get wrecked, though I don't know for sure, but it wasn't her who found the body. Dude I actually went to public school with in the first place, met his one love in grade 9, then immediately started dating, attended university near one another, lived together, the works. They get married, have 2 kids, great jobs, everything just lined up perfectly, until he died suddenly of heart failure. Not sure which is more tragic, his passing, or her moving on with 2 kids under 5 without him. This might sound cold, but it sounds like he lived a pretty full life and got to accomplish things that many don't in his personal life, so it isn't all bad. Our valedictorian dropped out of college due to his rich parents dying in a tragic accident and through a series of lawsuits on the estate by business partners, had pretty much nothing left to him, so he moved to northern rural Illinois and works at a factory or a warehouse place. I hear about him through my sister. He has a stable life but is still incredibly depressed. Can't blame him. Poor guy. My school had a guy die like 3 hours after graduation. They were drunk, stoned and who knows what else. Somehow they ended up with a gun and were trying to spin it on their fingers or some crap and the gun ended up firing. Hit the guy right in the head. That's horrible and I feel horrible for saying Darwin Award. One girl had hydrocephalus. She was a nice girl, quiet, and always seemed to be sick. I was kind of friends with her past graduation, and whenever I was on AIM we would chat a little bit. She always seemed to be getting ready for another surgery, or just had one. On top of that, her personal life was rough. Around 5 relatives of hers died within a span of 3 years. She died age 22 from complications. I wanted to go to the funeral, but it happened while I was across the country. What a sad, crappy way to go. As someone who has hydrocephalus and is currently waiting for my doctor to call on my results, this one hit home. A buddy of mine was worried that he wouldn't get into any colleges, so on a whim he signed his life away to the Marines. A few weeks after enlisting he receives acceptance letters from every school he applied to. He has a miserable time in the military but makes it home after 4 years or so. He was a different guy after he came back. One weekend he plans a get together at his house and doesn't invite anyone till the day of. No one is able to make it. A few days later, after a dumb disagreement with his dad, he goes in his backyard and shoots himself. Maybe it was PTSD or some form of depression, but he was loved by his family and loved by us. It's something my friends and I will never understand. I knew this girl. She got knocked up. Life was a big joke and a party and a game, and she smoked and drank and did drugs all through the pregnancy. The last I heard, she and her boyfriend were living in a tent. I don't know what became of the baby. He was screwed before he was even born. Poor bastard. I hate her for that. Her and this other chick I knew who kinda did the same stupid crap. I'm toking for 2, she'd gleefully say as she took a huge bong hit. God, that made me so angry. One of mine, year below though, had her entire family, including extended family, murdered by one of her cousins. For whatever reason she stayed at a friend's house the night they were all murdered at her house. A bit different than the death ones. Almost my entire graduating class attended an evangelical Christian high school, no alternate schools in the area, and most of them wound up married young, uneducated, living paycheck to paycheck, unhappy because they aren't the same people at 35 they were at 18 and are stuck with partners who have nothing in common with them. Consequently, I don't attend reunions. The guy that used to bully me in elementary school ended up getting testicular cancer. I think he's still alive, but last I heard he wasn't doing well at all. We're only 25. Our most likely to succeed has 4 kids with 2 different women, has been arrested for domestic violence, is on his second marriage and left his first bride to be at the altar, lost his house to foreclosure, lives in a trailer, and cannot hold down a job for more than 2 years. Well, he succeeded at passing down his genes at any rate. Went to a small prep school in CT with a graduating class of 51. There was 3-4 black kids in our school, I'm Indian, BTW, who were recruited to play sports. One of these kids, let's call him Tar, was an awesome dude who was popular, athletic, and just a nice guy all around. He came from a working class family and was the first person in his family to go to college. 2 years in, he fails out by just not going to class. He comes back home and tries to make it as a rapper. He was horrible and didn't have any success in that. One day, I see an article in the local paper that he's been arrested for stalking a woman in the street and exposing himself to her. A few months later, he's caught doing the same thing in the local library. It was quiet for a couple years after. Then a friend texts me an article that he was arrested twice in 3 days for exposing himself to 2 different women, both senior citizens. They showed his mugshot and he looked homeless. I spoke to a mutual acquaintance and from what I've heard, Ty doesn't think he needs help and his family doesn't believe in modern medicine. A girl I knew, super sweet and very motivated to help others. She became a counselor for people in need and drug addicts, then died of ridiculously rare cancer in her mid-20s. She was better than most of us, and her death is proof there is no justice in the universe. I think we have enough proof already. I wish the universe would just stop providing it now. There was a kid in my class whom I didn't know too well. I saw him in the news one day shot dead from defending his little brother from bullies. Tragic way to go. I remember him being a smart kid. Dunno if tragic, but definitely noteworthy. The guy who I got kicked out of our high school prom with for taking as a date. Gay dates were a no-no in the 90s. Died a few years back. The guy had apparently been doing shitloads of methadone and Xanax, which is supposed to kill you, but that wasn't what killed him. We were all astounded to learn that he in fact died from an actually medicinal prescription drug he was on reacted badly with some Sudafed he took. Crazy crap. Also, the cute innocent Christian girl I always thought was pretty and would have died to be with, she ended up basically becoming a child support seeker and has had 3 kids by 3 different fathers who all pay her child support. Conversely, the girl who used to openly brag about blowing multiple guys went to college with me, graduated, and is about to open her own law firm. Life's funny like that. Your post is a good reminder to not judge a book too harshly after only a few chapters. One guy, who was an average kid in school, joined the military and was doing really well, getting promoted and crap, and then he broke his back during a training accident and got medicaled out. Now he's stuck doing crappy fast food jobs. He just lost his mother a few months ago to an illness. A few grades ahead of me there was a girl who was wicked smart and talented. She played several sports, was in band, won a Louis Armstrong Jazz Award, member of the chess team, math league, remembered 1027 digits of pi, etc. Graduated college, escaped the Midwest, married her wife, and then she dies in her sleep on Thanksgiving from a brain aneurysm at 26. I just looked back at her obituary and got so mad that the universe took such a gifted person away from this world. A couple years after graduation they found a good friend of mine with his truck in a ditch and wandering around in a daze. They took him in for a wee but ended up not charging him because he hadn't been drinking. Turned out to be a brain tumor. He initially responded to chemo and went into remission. A few years later it came back with a vengeance and took his life. He died 6 months and a day ago. He was an okay person. His friend who was driving had passed the licensed driving test 2 months before. The car was old, the road wet, it was night. There is a tricky curve. The car went on the other side of the road and crushed against an incoming stronger car. The people in the other car survived. 3 guys in the totaled car died. 1 got extremely injured. I came there not much after paramedics and police. It was really scary. I didn't get to know who was involved till the morning. I have to drive on that road every day on my commute. His mother sometimes visits mine because they are friends. We grew up together and it feels so unreal to visit his tomb. One of my best friends from high school worked her butt off to help support her mom and sisters during high school. She helped raise her deadbeat cousin's daughter. She took honors classes and was our student president, among other extracurriculars. She stayed at home to go to a community college, received her associates, then moved about an hour away to go to a state university for her bachelor's. Toward the end of her first year at the uni, she died in a tornado. Dang, I didn't see that coming. So sorry to hear that. Depends on if you count being a murderer tragic. Classmate got involved in a gang senior year, then killed an old man for money, got caught, and looks like he'll be in prison for life. He broke out for 2 days roughly before he got caught about 60 miles out stealing a car. I don't feel pity for him, so I don't know if it'd count as being tragic. The tragedy is what he could have been. We had a guy that seemed to have all the breaks. Daddy was rich and mommy was good looking. His dad paid for an undergrad degree at USC and Stanford Law School. When we turned 30 he had life by the balls and was looking at a seat in the US Congress. Then he got greedy. The SEC busted a small-time stockbroker that had an alarmingly high success rate in picking stocks about to take off and shorting stocks about to crash. He took a deal and implicated our boy and 2 other junior partners in an insider trading scam. They provided him with the tips and he told a small network of investors, all while managing their accounts using clever schemes as their kids' and pets' names. He did 5 years in federal prison and lost everything. His wife and kids moved back to where she came from. His parents disowned him, and as a convicted felon, he couldn't find work, any work. He thought he could make it as a small-time drug dealer. He was wrong. He spent much of his last 15 or so years in and out of prison on drug-related charges. He died in 2008 of complications due to HIV. Do your own math on that. I have a cousin whom I treat as a real brother. He never leaves me in any situation, even at troubles. He'll always be there. He is such a good guy, but it seems life played a very bad joke on him. After his father died from an accident, got electrocuted from a high voltage wire, he decided not to go to college to help his family. He never takes a ride from house to work so he can save more money to pay for the bills, food and education of his brother and sisters. I remember him wanting to court a lady, but he doesn't have any money or nice clothes. So what me and my other friends do, I let him use some of my shirts and pants. A friend of ours provided him with a pair of shoes and lent him his motorcycle so he won't spend any money on transportation. That time, the only thing he wears that was his underwear. That's how bad his situation is. I remember him coming to my house, saying they only got 2 eggs and few rice for a meal which will be shared to his 5 family members. So I gave him some groceries and just told him not to tell his family that it came from me. I promised him that if I will make it big in this life, I'll make sure that he'll be included in my luck. I was able to secure a good job in abroad and I brought him from our country to work here. He was able to save a few money before going back. He got a lot of story, but it will be too long to read. I just wish he finds true happiness. Friend of mine was a gifted musician. Like so many artists, though, it came with a price. He had schizophrenia or something like it. After a run on drugs, hitting what we thought was rock bottom, going through months of rehab, he had a relapse, disappeared from his parents' house, and reappeared dead in a drug den down in California. Chris was a Marine who survived multiple combat deployments only to die outside his barracks room in North Carolina. Right before he was about to deploy for a 3rd time, his girlfriend and parents came down to visit him. Him and his girlfriend got drunk and began to argue at a bar, so he walked back to his room. He got to his door and couldn't find his key, so he punched his glass window out of frustration. He punched the window so hard he fell through, slicing his arm almost completely off from his armpits to his shoulder. 2 other Marines were outside smoking and witnessed the entire thing. They attempted to stop the bleeding, but he cut right through a major artery. Later it was revealed that his room key was in his pocket the entire time. A lot of people tried throwing his girlfriend under the bus and blaming it on her, but in reality Chris was a drunk who was possibly suffering from PTSD. Coolest guy I knew. I wanted to be him. He was so rad. He dropped out of high school in 10th and went and got his GED so he could start working and making money. Seemed like a real smart move to me. Then later he got hooked on H and his name appeared in the newspaper. He'd gotten super high in a movie theater and was found by the ushers after the film was over and the lights came back up. The ambulance came and revived him and he was arrested and sent to the hospital. I saw him once after that. He and I were both working crap jobs, but I was on my way up and finishing my degree. He was definitely not. A lot of these are downright depressing. Mine isn't that horrible. He's living life. But it was a real so that's how the world works scenario. In school with the same kid since kindergarten, says he's going to go to Harvard. He is brilliant and also works like crazy to make sure that he always has the highest grade. But wasn't a dong about it. He was friendly and would help you if you were struggling. He played several instruments, did volunteer through his church, did sports, worked with local refugees. Just an all-around good, smart guy that you wouldn't wish ill on. He was number 1 in our high school class, and we lived outside of Boston. He got almost perfect sats. He didn't get in. What rubbed salt in the wound was that the number 2 person in our school got in and was a legacy at Harvard. Her great-grandfather, grandfather, father, and 2 brothers all went there. Had worse SAT scores and almost no extracurricular activities. And unless an extraordinary case, Harvard doesn't seem to accept multiple people from the same Boston area high school. He ended up going to BU, which isn't a bad school, but it's not any place that I ever would have expected to see him attend. He's now on his way to becoming a doctor after being an EMT for several years, so he's doing okay. TLDR. Learned from classmate that you can work hard and be the best, and still get dicked over by someone because of who they are. Story below. There was this kid in my high school class, nickname B, for anonymity. He was on the varsity basketball team, extremely well liked, and just a good kid. I don't think this kid had a bad bone in his body. All he wanted to do was go to church, please his parents, and go to college by playing basketball. He was good too. He got a full scholarship to one of our state universities at the beginning of his senior year. Then came prom. His date was a really good friend of mine and they both ended up back at my house at the end of the night. B was worried about getting up in time for church the next morning, so he said his goodbyes to everyone and left. He ended up falling asleep at the wheel, crossed a median and hit another driver head on. Both of them were killed. I found out on the drive down to the beach that afternoon, and it was just surreal. School was very, very quiet that week. 5 years ago, one of my best friends in the world was scheduled to have her tonsils removed because she was having constant sore throats that nothing seemed to fix. During routine pre-surgery blood work, it was found that her white blood cell count was off the charts. She was immediately hospitalized and soon after, diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia at the age of 25. She spent months in and out of the hospital with round after round of aggressive chemo. 5 months later, she was deemed in remission and had a bone marrow donor lined up for a bone marrow transplant that would hopefully cure her. That donor backed out at the last minute. She never got the transplant. She continued on chemo up until August of 2012, 1 year after her diagnosis. She was done with her latest round of chemo. Talked to her on the 19th of August and she was fine. 3 days later, I get a call that she was being placed in hospice. She went downhill rapidly. I made a 3-hour drive to see her one last time. At that point she was unconscious. She passed away before I made it home that night. Less than 3 hours after I had seen her. I miss her every day. I just got married and her absence was definitely felt. We had a girl that graduated in my class die on a Make-A-Wish trip for her little brother. Her adult life lasted all of 6 months. Well, I'm 22 and last month had to visit 2 funerals in a week because a couple I graduated with both just died of age around a month ago. So honestly I think it's those two. A lot of people are severe alcoholics or just never accomplished anything. But I think that has to take the cake. On a different way, a guy who was top 10% and brilliant got kicked out a week before graduation for being caught smoking pot. He was disowned by his parents after it, very strict Catholic, and now lives in a really beat up old house and is a package handler in a ups. He was going to be an engineer but couldn't go to college based on no parental support after that. He told me he feels like he blew any chance he had that week. Guy who was behind me in alphabetical order, and therefore had a locker next to me all through high school, got arrested the summer after graduation for fondling a 6-year-old. We had a petite, quiet, nicer woman that died in a house fire possibly set by an ex-BF of hers. We also have an accused child pea maker who is spending a long time in prison. Graduated in the early 80s. A girl from my class was dating a guy from our class and soon after graduation he, while drunk, totaled the car they were in and she was partially paralyzed. After a few years in a wheelchair and lots of painful physical therapy she was able to walk again. Then she met another guy, contracted AIDS from him and died. Never made it out of her 20s. One of the kids in the year below me drowned while on a trip to South Africa. It was only 1 or 2 years after graduation. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.